It's June 2025 and in California, something feels deeply wrong. Imagine waking up not to the sound of your alarm but to the sight of military trucks rolling down your street. This isn't a scene from a movie, it's the reality for many in Los Angeles. The federal government has deployed hundreds of Marines and thousands of National Guard troops to the city. The official reason? To protect federal buildings from protesters who are angry about immigration policies. But when you see soldiers on the same corners where kids usually play, it's hard not to ask, who are they really protecting and from what? It feels less like protection and more like an occupation, a show of force designed to send a very clear, very intimidating message. At the same time, another kind of siege is happening. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has launched massive raids across the state. Agents in unmarked vans are descending on neighborhoods in Los Angeles, Sacramento, and Santa Ana. They're showing up at homes, workplaces, and even schools. They are targeting the places where life happens, turning everyday locations into zones of fear. People are being snatched off the street, sometimes without warrants, in operations that feel more like a kidnapping than law enforcement. This isn't just about enforcing immigration law. The White House has openly admitted the goal is to intimidate Hispanic communities. It's a strategy that uses fear as a weapon, making entire communities feel like they are under attack in their own homes. The impact is immediate and devastating. Streets that were once vibrant with vendors and families have gone quiet. People are afraid to go to work, to take their children to school, or even to buy groceries. An eerie silence has fallen over some agricultural areas, as farm workers, many of whom are undocumented, stay home to avoid being swept up in the raids. Volunteers are scrambling to deliver food to families who have lost their income overnight or are too scared to leave their houses. This isn't a natural disaster. It's a man-made crisis of fear, deliberately inflicted upon the most vulnerable. It's a campaign designed to make people feel unwelcome and unsafe in the country they call home. This campaign of intimidation hit a shocking new level with the detainment of a United States senator. During a press conference, Senator Alex Padilla, a prominent voice for immigrant rights, tried to question the Secretary of Homeland Security about the raids. Before he could get an answer, federal agents grabbed him, put him in handcuffs, and dragged him away. Think about that for a moment. A sitting U.S. senator, an elected representative of the people, was forcibly silenced for asking a question. This isn't just an attack on one man, it's an attack on the very idea of accountability and dissent. When the government can detain and arrest its own critics in broad daylight, it sends a chilling message to everyone else. Stay silent or you could be next. While these raids and military deployments are aimed squarely at Latino and immigrant communities, the shockwaves are being felt far beyond. For Black Americans, the sight of militarized federal forces policing American cities is a terrifyingly familiar story with a new, dangerous chapter. The tactics being used in Los Angeles, the overwhelming show of force, the suppression of protest, the targeting of specific communities, are the same ones that could easily be turned against Black communities in cities like Detroit, Chicago, or Baltimore. The justification might change from immigration enforcement to restoring order, but the result would be the same: the erosion of civil rights and the silencing of political voices. It sets a dangerous precedent that one group's rights can be suspended for political reasons. The detainment of Senator Padilla and dozens of other local leaders, protesters, and journalists is particularly alarming. For Black communities that have fought for generations to gain political power and representation, this is a direct threat. If an elected official can be handcuffed for speaking out, what hope does an ordinary citizen have? This creates a chilling effect on activism and political participation. People may become too afraid to protest, to organize, or even to vote, for fear of attracting the attention of federal agents. It's a strategy that seeks to dismantle the very tools of democracy that marginalized communities have used to fight for justice and equality. The message is clear: your voice doesn't matter, and if you insist on using it, there will be consequences. This isn't just a hypothetical threat, it's a warning. The federal government is testing how far it can go in using its power against its own citizens. Today, the targets are immigrants in California. Tomorrow it could be anyone who disagrees with the people in power. The playbook is being written right now in plain sight. By normalizing the use of military force for domestic policing and by criminalizing dissent, the government is building a framework that can be applied to any group it deems a threat. Protecting the constitutional rights of immigrants is not just about protecting them, It's about protecting the principle that these rights belong to everyone, regardless of their background or political views. This is why solidarity between communities of color is more important than ever. The strategy of divide and conquer only works if people allow themselves to be divided. When Black leaders and organizations stand with Latino and immigrant communities, they are not just showing support, they are defending their own future. They understand that an injustice against one community is a threat to all communities. The fight for civil rights is a shared struggle. The same forces that seek to intimidate and silence one group will eventually come for others. Recognizing this shared vulnerability is the first step toward building a united front strong enough to push back against these authoritarian tactics and protect the rights of everyone. What we're witnessing in California is more than just a series of aggressive police actions, it's a constitutional crisis in the making. The deployment of federal troops in Los Angeles against the explicit wishes of both the governor and the mayor represents a profound challenge to the American system of government. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass have not been silent. They have filed lawsuits against the federal government calling the military presence unconstitutional, reckless, and a direct assault on democracy. They argue that the president does not have the authority to unilaterally send troops into a state for domestic law enforcement, especially when local leaders have said they are not needed or wanted. This legal battle is not just about Los Angeles. It's about a fundamental question of power. The case, Newsom versus Trump, is now before a federal judge, and its outcome could redefine the balance of power between the federal government and the states for generations to come. At stake is the principle that our military should not be used against our own people for political purposes. For centuries, the U.S. has maintained a clear line between the military, which fights foreign enemies, and civilian police, who enforce domestic laws. Blurring that line is a hallmark of authoritarian regimes, not democracies. If the courts allow this deployment to stand, it could open the door for future presidents to send troops into any city that opposes their political agenda, turning our armed forces into a personal political enforcement squad. The official justification for this military presence, protecting federal facilities, has been widely criticized as a thin excuse. Mayor Bass called the administration's reasoning an outright lie, pointing out that local law enforcement was already managing the protests effectively. Latino legislators have condemned the entire operation as a transparent effort to intimidate and terrorize communities. The real goal appears to be the suppression of dissent. It's about making a political statement and punishing a state and a city that have stood in opposition to the administration's hardline immigration policies. It transforms a political disagreement into a military confrontation, a dangerous escalation that undermines the very foundations of democratic debate and rule of law. This situation forces every American to confront a difficult question. Where do we draw the line? When does enforcing the law cross over into violating fundamental rights? The Constitution is supposed to protect people from this very kind of government overreach. It guarantees the right to protest, the right to due process, and the principle that military power should be subject to civilian control. The events in California are putting those guarantees to the test. The legal challenges, the public outcry, and the condemnation from elected officials are all part of a crucial defense of these democratic norms. The fight is not just about the rights of immigrants in California. It's about whether the United States will remain a country governed by laws or by the whims of those in power. As the crisis in California deepens, the question on everyone's mind is, what happens next? The most immediate fear is that this is just a trial run. If the federal government succeeds in deploying troops and conducting mass raids in California with few consequences, it is highly likely that these tactics will be expanded to other Democrat-led cities. Places like Chicago, New York, Atlanta, and Detroit could be next on the list. The playbook is simple. Find a pretext, whether it's immigration or civil unrest, and use it to justify an overwhelming show of federal force. This could become the new normal for how the federal government deals with political opposition at the local level. A chilling prospect for the future of American democracy. But communities are not standing by silently. They are fighting back. The resistance is happening on multiple fronts. In the courts, the Newsom versus Trump lawsuit is a critical legal battle to re-establish constitutional limits on presidential power. In the streets, people are organizing. Activists are creating rapid response networks to document ICE activity, provide legal aid to those who have been detained, and organize protests to keep public pressure on elected officials. In Sacramento, state lawmakers are pushing for new laws to protect sensitive locations like schools and hospitals from ICE raids, and to limit how much information local agencies can share with federal immigration authorities. This is a multi-layered defense, combining legal, political, and grassroots action. At the heart of this resistance is a growing movement of solidarity. Black leaders and civil rights organizations are increasingly joining forces with Latino and immigrant advocacy groups. They recognize that the threat is shared and that their fates are intertwined. This alliance is powerful because it bridges historical divides and builds a broader, more resilient coalition. When different communities stand together, they amplify their collective voice and demonstrate that the fight for civil rights is universal. They are planning coordinated legal strategies, joint legislative efforts, and unified grassroots campaigns. This solidarity is the most potent antidote to the government's strategy of division and fear. It sends a message that an attack on one community will be met with the unified resistance of many. Ultimately, the future depends on this collective action. The path forward requires courage, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to defending democratic principles. It means supporting the legal challenges, showing up for protests, and demanding accountability from every level of government. It also means having difficult conversations with friends and neighbors about why protecting the rights of immigrants and protesters is essential for protecting everyone's rights. The events in California are a wake-up call. They reveal how fragile our civil liberties can be and how quickly they can be eroded. The choice is between a future where fear and force reign and one where solidarity and justice prevail. The fight for the soul of America is happening now, on the streets of Los Angeles, and everyone has a role to play.